Well, this is what we have agreed with Ambassador, and I think, yeah, this is a panel which I intend to have in English. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm very happy here, actually, to have both Tanja Miščević and Sam Fabrizi, head of the EU delegation. Milan, just a second. I really want to explain why I insist on the two of them. Tanja, we have just exchanged several words. We know each other for years. Is, from as far as I know, the second longest serving head of the negotiation team. Well, I think that Ambassador Drobnjak, who was doing the same thing for Croatia, might have spent a year or two longer in this position, and you are the next one. Having in mind the perspective of joining, I somehow trust that you might serve longer than he did in his career. And Sam Fabrizi is the head of the EU delegation, so I wanted to have this discussion on where we are in the negotiations, in the accession process, and to have kind of an open discussion, an open position presented both by someone who is doing this on behalf of government of Serbia. There I will support you, trust me, as well as Ambassador Sam Fabrizi, who is looking at this process as a servant of European Union. Milan Antonijević, I'd like to say a word. First, I'd like to congratulate you, as since only recently he was appointed head of the OSI, Open Society Institutes, Foundation for Serbia. So he is heading the foundation in Serbia. This is a novice, and this is a kind of a respect for what you've done, particularly in the field of human rights, because the years you spent, years behind you, were marked by constant engagement in insisting on respect for the rule of law towards every citizen in Serbia. So I'd like to use the opportunity and congratulate you. Tanja, I would kindly invite you to give us your overview. Feel free, spend 3, 4, 5 minutes, because then I might be tempted to challenge you, but I'd like to hear from you. How do you see the current situation in the accession process? Where do you see Serbia now? How do you see several years back, and what you might expect in the years to come?
Thank you very much, Goran. And as always, I'm grateful to Aleksandar Vlahovic and the Economic Forum here to invite us to discuss the issue of the negotiation and European integration of Serbia, because this is the overarching process which encompasses every reform that people here discuss, much more educated people in economy than I am. It is always a challenge to answer the question and being open and honest in the presence of several EU ambassadors or member states ambassadors, and in the presence of the audience which understand that, of course, we cannot be very happy and satisfied with the tempo. But for me, the tempo is a second-rate or second-level importance in the very process. Because, and it's not the mantra that we are sharing with the people here in Serbia, that the process is more important at the very date, but it is actually, because all the changes that we are going to do and all the changes that people supposed to see are going to happen until the very date of us becoming member of the European Union. And it goes not only in the most famous or infamous chapters, rule of law chapters, as Ambassador Scott this morning suggested not to mention chapters, number of chapters, but to speak about the substance. So rule of law, definitely the most important, but do not neglect the importance of issues and the reforms that are necessary in the area of food safety, for example, intellectual property right, or in the area of free movement of goods, where we have to align our standards, which is very important for economy of this country, in order for us to produce the products for which we don't have any tax barriers any longer, but qualitative barriers exist still, because our standards are not equal to the standards existing in the European Union, or overarching reform of the public administration. From time to time, we forgot about the importance of this reform. I do see the changes since the moment I was appointed. A small digression. So actually, Mr. Drobnjak has been appointed a few years before they opened the negotiation. I was appointed only just before the negotiation, so we might be, we might compete in that respect. But since I was appointed, that was September 2013, and the situation which is now in at the beginning of 2019, you can obviously see a lot of changes. But what we are missing, constantly missing, is even more than only implementation of the laws that exist. This is the track record that we have to prove now. Not only in terms of the rule of law, but also in terms of track record of tangible efforts or tangible results that we might see as a result of those reforms. I argue actually that it's not possible to produce the tangible track record at the same time building the very strong institutions. Because either you might not be able to create those institutions properly, to root them properly, in order for them to produce the real track record, but or the track record will be false. It will be built like we saw in some other candidate country, previous candidate country, now member states. A lot of things that have been done in different areas. In December, we opened 2 chapters, Economic Monetary Union and the chapter dealing with statistics, which is of the immense importance for the topics that we discuss here in Kopaonik. And actually, in those 2 areas, we are doing a very good job. Even by assessment by the European Commission, when we discussed a few days ago, our statistical office could not be compared with any in the region. It's much better. It can be compared. The result that they are producing is even at the level of the average level of the EU member states. So those are the small things that people could not see, the common person could not see in that respect.
I'll challenge you immediately. You have said, and I tend to agree, and I challenge everyone to disagree, you said you are not happy with the tempo. Who's to blame?
Well,
how do you explain? Why is this happening? The reality is, I mean, we all know, these people, they know we are opening on average 2 chapters per year. Yes.
2 chapters per semester.
Per semester. Mm-hmm. Yes, we are not happy. But then let's be honest and say, what are the problems? Is it the EU member states? Is it the Commission? Is it our government? Is it the whole political scene, the team? What are the problems?
Or civil society? It's a civil society problem.
You said that. You remember Žika Kovačević, the president of European Movement in Serbia? He used to say that we never miss the opportunity to miss the opportunity. And we missed a lot of opportunity, and then we came at the very end. That means that the EU is now faced with a lot of different type of challenges, and with the challenge of accepting as a new member states countries which are from the only enclave in Europe which is still not part of the European institution. During the time when we missed a lot of chances, they changed or they followed the enlargement process, the accession process, and they added a lot of new experience from those previous rounds of enlargement. Now the process is completely different than it used to be back in 70s, 80s, not even mentioning the beginning of 2000, beginning of 21st century. Let me just remind you that there is no possibility to go further if there is no real progress in rule of law chapters for Serbia, including the dialogue with Kosovo. While we can be blamed for not progressing properly, if not progressing properly in rule of law chapters, there is additional player in the dialogue with Pristina, which also is part of this assessment.
Let's leave the dialogue aside for a moment. It is a huge cloud. We actually had a breakfast. It's no secret. The three of us were having a breakfast, and we have discussed this big cloud. I insisted, but not here, not now. It is a huge issue, I agree, but you have said the tempo, but you have said as well that there is a good track record when it comes to the reform process. If that is the case, and now I challenge you, why is Commission investing additional money in communication in the region, having particularly in mind Serbia? Am I right or wrong? That you do have particularly in mind a need to communicate the European accession, European agenda with the people in Serbia as well as with the RSS region, as well as with the EU citizens. But so about the track record, is there a problem in communication that you may mend, that you may do better about? What do you think? Well, you touch upon this, whether we play with figures. Yes, I was making the same mistake. The language is technical. We all know it is technical. So what can we do better to really communicate with the broader audience in the country, with the people, about not only the huge amount of money invested by the EU, and it is, a lot has been invested, but what the government has done, how the government has changed the life of the people better, thanks to the fact that there was a reform process as part of the accession process. What can be done better?
Well, communication is one issue, but it's not only the issue that is in portfolio of, I don't know, Minister for European Integration or the head of negotiating team or the delegation of European Union here in Serbia, but portfolio of each and every of the ministries and bodies in the government. While we are talking, there will be a discussion, parallel discussion about the competition rights and the protection of competition rights. They are doing a very good job, the Commission for the Protection of the Competition Rights, in explaining why it's so important to discuss the issue. But have you seen that in the media? Can you imagine that somebody will be interested to read that a part of the group of people that we have here or downstairs discussing the issue? That
what is your explanation? Why not in the media? I wouldn't blame journalists.
No, I'm not blaming journalists. I'm also blaming the general interest for the topic. I use that very often, and excuse my blunt explanation, but we are not sexy enough in that respect. Those stories are not stories for the front pages of the media. Since the visa liberalization process, some topic like this you will not see during the negotiation.
Well, I've listened carefully this morning to the Prime Minister, Ana Brnabić. I think it was a great speech. This is very personal. I think she has touched every relevant issue. And she did it in a manner that everyone could understand. So I love it. Therefore, perhaps there is also an issue about the skills. How do we communicate European reform process as well?
You're right. You are right. But there are also other issues that take a lot of attention from the public here in Serbia. I'm not going to go into the political issues, but I'm not blaming media and journalists, but I would love to sit and discuss with them bits and pieces of some chapters which they think it's not important, but they might produce a bigger results than anybody could expect. And my favorite explanation is always about the environmental issues, where people actually will see the first results of the reform process. They saw already.
Look, let's welcome a minister of environment who is carefully following what we're saying.
I took the liberty to mention the issue, not knowing that minister is here, but definitely we discuss a lot about that. It's extremely important, like hazardous waste. Actually, for decades, nobody mentioned it, and during the last few years, we started discussing a very heavy topic on this.
I know this is challenging, and I put a lot of pressure at you, and will do more, and then I'll move further. Are you supported by the government? Do you feel you have a full support of those who call the shots?
Yeah, without any question.
Thank you. Well, Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us. Basically, the same set of questions for you, or one general. How do you see where is Serbia in the accession process now? How do you see from your side what's been done. Well, Tanja Mišović, the chief negotiator, has mentioned a track record of reforms. She has also mentioned stable institutions as a result of the reform process. You tend to agree, and then I move later on to Milan with the same questions. Ambassador, please.
Thank you. And let me congratulate for the event, and also thank the organizer for inviting me for this panel. I'm between the government and civil society, so I really feel in the middle of the narrative. But thank you also to the colleagues who are here to participate in this debate tonight. How I see the accession, of course, we all know there is a complex explanation. Enlargement is a complex issue, but I try to limit to the essential, trying to be as much as clear as possible. Maybe start from last year. I presume there was a similar debate at this forum. In the past, if we do a back forward, little bit background, 2018 has been a very busy year for the EU and this region on the enlargement. Most of you, many of you, some of you will be aware that we have made an important policy commitment again with the Western Balkan strategy, which has basically reset the parameter for enlargement. We had the political checkout in Sofia. We had the European Council, and from there we have started to see some progress in the region. And if I zoom out on a regional perspective, the agreement on the name of North Macedonia has been a great achievement. Today, the authorities of Bosnia and Herzegovina has handed over to Brussels a very complex and detailed questionnaire for having Bosnia and Herzegovina recognized as a candidate state. So it's a big regional work we are doing on different levels. Where Serbia is in the process. Serbia started this process already in 2014. A number of opening negotiation has been done, usually referred like chapters. But if I want to go to the essential, three elements I see. One I exclude immediately because you said correctly that we won't be the discussions today, which is the regional part, dialogue with Pristina. The other two for me and for us is basically the reform of the economy and the reform into what we call the rural area, which goes from is a broad basket that goes from democracy, freedom of media, the role of the parliament, the judiciary, and so on and so on. The economy is what has been the focus of this forum. This is an economic forum. I think this morning has been quite an important assessment where Serbia is. When I see where I see Serbia's economic development, for me, is where is Serbia economic development towards the European Union. And you see an economy which has found again is fundamental. Is basically the macroeconomic consolidation has been done. The numbers seems to be good. Deficit, debt, unemployment. Growth is back, 4% of growth in 2018. But at the same time, the Prime Minister also elaborated on the number of reforms that still are there, as tax administration, state-owned enterprises, public administration, fight against corruption. There's a number of reforms the government has to tackle into the economic area, which will untap the potential of the economy and certainly will put the economy on a more sustainable base. So our reading of the economy, which is in the economic part of the accession, is largely convergent. Good work done to put the economy back on track, but still a lot of work to do because the economy has to grow. Because if you look in the past decade, the forum is 10 years after the start, is basically the leverage of economic growth in Serbia has been stable over the decade. But the gap with the European Union hasn't been reduced substantially, which means the economic is back on track, but the economy has to grow faster and better to close the gap. So the second basket is the reform on the rule of law, and certainly there we have assessed that limited progress has been made. In some areas has been made more reform, in others less, but certainly our message, which we assess the progress of Serbia every year. And in April 2019, we will present, spring 2019, we will assess our reading what happened in the past 12 months. So the period which goes between March 18 to March 19. So as far as we are not yet completed this assessment, but if we made an assessment we already made in December last year, we saw that some areas still need to have a lot of work. So independence of the judiciary, fight against corruption, organized crime, fundamental right and freedom of media, and handling of war crimes. So there's some big areas of the work where we have seen that the progress has been limited. So if you ask me where I see the assessment of the negotiations, it's full on track. Numbers of chapters we shouldn't be consider the chapters as sort of a totem as an instrument of negotiation. Negotiation is so ample that you need to divide the area of negotiation in this chapter. Serbia has opened 16, closed 2, has to arrive at 35 and close all 35. So you might judge where are you. But the chapters are underpin reform. What is behind the reform? And I see again the reform in the economic area are more advanced, but still other reform need to be done. While in the area of rule of law, the chapter has been open, chapter 23, 24 has been open as the first, but still the work need to be done. So still again a lot of work to be done. So my assessment is quite realistic. I'm not over pessimistic nor over optimistic. It's realism, it's question of reform, it's question of tempo. If I anticipate your future question, is tempo. The tempo depends, of course, from the quality and from the impact that the reform have on the ground. It will come back on the question of track record. Track record is an expression to say, let me understand what this reform has produced on the ground. Have you having the impact or have not? You might have a fantastic piece of legislation, top of the notch legislation, and maybe legislation is not implemented, or those who are requested to implement the legislation, they are not ready to do, they're not trained. There's a number of reasons why a reform might not have any impact. We want to see the track record to say this reform that we have designed, implemented, is producing results. And still in some areas, track record is not there. So it's also the question of how to make an assessment on the impact. So
Ambassador, thank you very much.
Please.
You were very clear, and I'm still with you on this. But in one sentence, you have told us, when it comes to everything related to economic reform process, there are good marks to be given to the government in the last several years. When it comes to rule of law, broadly understood, you mentioned organized crime, fight against corruption, media freedom. Well, the track record is not convincing. Now I'm rephrasing what you said. Can you say a word or two? How do you see it? What are the problems? Because the message is clear. You are very clear. Please.
The message is that first one is the reform into the rule of law were assessed as the most difficult one. So that's why it's called fundamental first in our approach. So open immediately the most difficult issue. Don't put the difficult issue for the end. Put it up front. That's why the chapter, the area, rule of law area has been we have immediately engaged each other already in 2014 since the beginning. And it's difficult because they touch very sensitive issues. They require profound changes. Make an example. The area of independence of judiciary is not something you can do with the ordinary law. You need to go have a constitutional law. And to change a constitution, Serbia in 2006 introduced in the constitution a very hard measure to reform the constitution. Two-thirds majority with a confirmative referendum at the end. So it means in some areas like in independence of judiciary, we need also to go to some reform. They are particularly complex, they are have a particular impact, and they need to be well designed and well thought through to make the result we want. And on the other side, the track record, let me also add that is no track record when you have the legislation in place. But in some areas, still legislation is not yet there. So in the first part, you have to design a piece of legislation. You have to have the consultation, you have to have the agreement in the government, you have to pass in the parliament, and you have the legislation to be implemented. In some areas, We don't yet have the right legislation there. So in that sense, add an additional complication, because in some area we don't have even track record to track, because there's not yet the legislation there. But it's clear that the rule of law is a very complex area, is everywhere. In all accession has been a very important one, and I'm not surprised it remains important in Serbia as well.
Milan, as you are here, kind of a voice of the people, how do you see this dialogue on what's been done, what has not been done, what are the challenges? How do you see it?
We have now to compete with the previous session that was a bit more like a stand-up comedy, so I believe that that's one of the reasons why we're not reaching that far as we would like to, but I would say that we are repairing the railroad tracks while the train is on. So this is something that's happening with so many difficulties. Civil society is trying to point out it to be constructive, and then at the end we're seen as the enemies of the reform. So in that we have really to be very diplomatic, not to say and really not to disturb the road of Serbia towards the EU. But on the other side, we need real tangible results. If we're talking about anti-corruption, we have 300 cases in the last 12 months that are being ended up in our courts. This is not sufficient, especially bearing in mind that those who committed those crimes are not the highest officials and will not meet the requirement within the action plan that we need to have final decisions against those who are having strong positions within, whether government or state institution or public companies and so on. So EU, and that's the role of civil society. We have to insist on details, try to explain them to citizens at the same time, that it is equally important to have economic figures that some made out, as much as to have figures on the cases that are important for ordinary life of citizens. We have to be more consistent on the value side. We do not have the support on media, to be honest, especially in some of the areas where in the last decades we have so much negative background. Speaking of war crimes, the minute you say it, you're a traitor. And this is the perception of it. In the action plan for Chapter 23, we have to prove that there is a progress on war crimes. Whether we like it or not, this is something that Serbia promised, and we should explain it to citizens. So we didn't lie to the EU that we'll deal with those cases and then we will put them under the carpet. But we really have to open this debate in the society and give some of the tangible results. We also, I like the perspective of region and trying to take, and the whole movement now in the last months with some of the positive examples from the region can be really supportive to the reforms in Serbia. Because previously we were just saying region is equally bad as we are. So finally now we have some of the examples, early stages of those, so we cannot say that we're bad but they're worse than we are, some across the borders, but we really have to take now into competition and to understand, and all of the institutions should understand that it is a competition where everybody has to take its own role from the action plan and to work it till the end. There are 42, I think, in the Chapter 23 that I'm a bit more following from my previous post, but also from the OSF perspective, that we really have to engage in the reforms. So to be honest, the morning speech of the Prime Minister was, better than some of the messages that we heard in some other areas, such as war crimes and others, speaking of Srebrenica and so on. So they really have to stand also in front of all parts of the government and to be honest on what we promised and how to really reach to the citizens. Repairing media is something that's needed, badly needed, but it's up to the messages also that has to be strong and said, not misusing the media. Not everything is in ratings. You see what the ratings of civil society is. I will not speak, unfortunately, about it. But this is very, very hard task. And just to finish up, I don't know, I saw that you were trying to touch the microphone. And also to finish up with the judicial reform, there is a need to refresh the whole judiciary. Constitution is one of the ways. Citizens in Serbia do not know that we are changing the constitution. They do not know the reason Main reason is judiciary. There may be some other parts, also education. I mean, introducing secondary schools as obligatory. That's really, you know, big achievement for the educational policy of Serbia. But also on various things that happened, why the stage of our courts is as bad as it is, why we have to put another much more efforts than some other countries. We're trying to mobilize, and that's the role of the civil society, to mobilize also association of judges, of prosecutors, to be on board with us, because they have to change first. Constitution, of course, in the parallel course, but they really have to send the new message that they're strong enough to say no to everybody in the country, no matter who is leading this country, if there is a case or if there is a reason for some of the verdicts, and also to take politicians out of the courts and their messages over media and everything else, and to react on each of those very, very adequately and strongly.
Thank you, Milan. I think you were very clear, and I thank you all the three of you. I think it was very honest response to what I wanted to challenge you. Now, Tanya, I'd like to come back to you, but I would like to invite you to look into the EU rather than in what you are doing on a daily basis. This is what we have discussed. But look, 2018, and I was part of the processes as well, you and all the governments as well as European Commission, we've seen Sofia Summit. But the year started in February with the credible communication on credible, yes. And then it was you actually here in this very room explaining to this audience, how do you see it? And then you've said openly, well, look guys, this was not discussed in the council level. The European member states have not said that they are in agreement, la la la. That was before the Sofia Summit. What I've seen in Sofia Summit is exactly what you were saying here. And this is that somehow we, the Western Balkan 6 economies, ended up between the bureaucracy of the EU, which in this case is positive for us, thank you very much, and the politicians of the EU, led by several member states, which were not as supportive. So we've ended up with the summit, which promised to continue the process, to continue financial support, the process, but was not ready to mention the word enlargement, nor was mentioned to give more than, more particularly for Northern Macedonia and Albania at that time, than they really wanted. So how do you see this? I mean, well, this was a moment of truth for us. And now we are talking again at the beginning of the year in which we are going to see European elections. And we do have certain expectations. I'm not asking you to guess the outcome. But we may discuss what to expect as a result of these processes. So one is reality in Sofia Summit, when we have learned, a message was clear and repeated by French minister in Belgrade. First, we are taking care of our home EU, and then we will perhaps be able to more decisively say what do we think about the accession. While we, unison, as we never are, the six leaders were saying, no guys, we would like to be part of the process in parallel. While you consider changes of the EU that we understand, that we should be part of the process. So how do you see Sofia, and what do you expect from the new commission as a result of the vote of the people of the EU?
Well, I was right, yeah, when I tried to explain. Right. Because 2017 September, there was the State of Union speech, yeah, 2017 September. Yeah, by President Juncker. But immediately afterward, we had the speech by President Macron in Sorbonne, saying exactly what the French minister said, with a different tone, but more or less it was the same. So first us to reform, and then we will discuss about the further enlargement. And when journalists after that speech asked me what do I think about this, my interpretation was quite different. And I said I do understand the need of the European Union to reform itself, to be ready to accept new member states, but at the same time should not neglect, not neglecting the candidate countries, countries which are willing to become member of the European Union, particularly because of Brexit. This is a very strong argument. Okay, one is leaving, but there are a bunch of those who would like, because of the values, to become members. But actually now I cannot say the same interpretation a year and a half later. I've learned that actually they understood, the member states understood that they have to strictly take care about themselves. And taking care about themselves, that means about 27 member states. About their interrelation and their problems and challenges that they have, to discuss not what will be the finalité européenne, which is always the question, but what will be a short-term strategy or tactics for the development of the European integration. But I argue, as always, I am a student of European integration, and one of the best topics when you try to understand the EU is the history of European integration. And following the history of European integration, they never managed to find the answer of their internal reforms, not to discussing issue of further enlargement. This is the story about deepening and widening, which goes hand in hand. And I am now trying to explain that without discussing the further enlargement, the steps necessary for those countries which are willing to become member of the European Union, and taking care, especially during the time of their internal reform about those countries, taking care in terms of continuous discussion about their own domestic reforms, which is assessing and helping in those reforms. There will be no success in terms of the wider EU reforms. I'm not speaking about the accession of the Western Balkan countries. We are very far from that. As Ambassador Fabrizi said, we opened 16, closed 2 chapters, and we're supposed to close 35 chapters. And we're supposed to open additional 19 chapters, which is, I mean, here at the Economic Forum, I'm not going to go into the details of assessing how we are going to do that, or with this tempo, the assessment is 23 to finalists.
Tempo we have discussed.
Exactly.
Now we're discussing the EU and the citizens of the EU.
But yes, this is the problem. The problem is actually that enlargement now is not the topic for, or not the word that is very fashionable to be mentioned prior and during the election time for the European Parliament. So it's not going to be the topic for the European election, which is good, but it's not going to be topic for the internal debate, and we need the internal debate in the member states.
A tricky question for you, and
You
this is
always
now
pose
kind
me a
of
tricky
on behalf of Ambassador, but I'm asking you, what can the 2 of us, the 3 of us, I have in mind Milan and the civil society, what can we do better to convince the citizens of the EU, let's say after the elections, but in the years to come, what can we do better? Because obviously we have not done our task, and I take a responsibility as well for what I was doing. So we were not brilliant. What can we do better? What is the lesson learned? Where do you base your optimism?
Do I have an optimism? Yes, exactly. But what I am doing whenever I'm traveling to the member states, actually, I'm not only discussing with the people which are officials, which are responsible for assessing the accession process, but I have also this additional thing. I am the university professor, so always organizing a public speeches, discussion with the students, or European houses in the capitals of the member states, or discussion with the journalist. And I have to tell you that there is from time to time, a real astonishment with what we are doing here, because people are not informed. There are not a lot of news coming from not only our region, but also Serbia. And when there are news, there are in the Black Chronic always negative one. I'm not saying that it's good, that it's not good not to be on the front pages in the media in the EU member states, but from time to time they could also help us, member states, in producing some positive developments and results here. And this is also a call for the dear ambassadors of member states to help us in this.
Look, when it comes to good or bad news, and then I'll move to Ambassador, but I'd like to say, if we build a power plant which is using biomass, this will go around. That would be. Serbia will be, at least shortly, on the front pages, wow, they're doing something great, which we are also supportive for. Then I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Brankica Jankovic, who is one of the ombudspersons here. Thank you very much for joining us. Also congratulate to you as European of the Year, as awarded by civil society and your peers. If her report is regularly, honestly discussed in the Parliament, as well as the report of the Ombudsman, this will also be a piece of good news that the others will see. And I would like to move to Ambassador. So Tanya was very honest, and I really would like to applaud to her. How do you see this development till Sofia and then from Sofia further on in, let's say, future of 2020, or beginning of 2020, after the elections and everything? What do you expect?
Thank you. Well, on the Sofia, it's I think maybe I was a little bit too cryptic. For all those who knows how the EU works, the Commission has the initiative role. Council, together with the Parliament, set the rules. So the Commission made a very, I would say, honest and ambitious, and credible strategy for the Western Balkan. And I think that and I call the Sofia Summit a reality check. So Commission proposed how the members received. And I would say it has been received quite well. Maybe you have a different reading, but my reading has been continue to work. The money is there. We all work on this, maybe we have time, on these 6 areas, rule of law, migration, connectivity, digital, transport, reconciliation, the so-called 6 flagship initiative. And I think some positive element appeared. I don't think this, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think the Prespa agreement would have been possible if we hadn't have a regional perspective for the region. I'm still optimistic that an agreement on the Pristina and Belgrade agreement can still be possible. I'm still optimistic that Albania and North Macedonia will get the opening the negotiation, and Bosnia-Herzegovina will be recognized as a candidate. So we shouldn't undermine the work that collectively we have been done in 2018, and the momentum is still there. The question is, and I go to your second question, the EU is distracted on other things. Again, I appeal to a sense of realism. It's a union of 28, 500 million people, the largest economy in the world, so we have a number of issues we have to look after. We do election every 5 years and budget every 7. And this year we do every 47, first time in 46 years we do an exit. A busy agenda. Some of them, Parliament and budget, is business as usual. Thanks God we have election. Thanks God we have a budget. I don't think we have more busy or less busy. We are busy all the time. The Europe is a project in continuous evolution. Enlargement means that still we can move forward. So I wouldn't blame the EU reforming process as an obstacle. Otherwise we will consider enlargement as an obstacle. No, it's not. We are an ever-expanding. We are an expanding project with new areas. In this year we have done defense union, energy union. We are working on banking union. All these areas where we are working. So I would say that in an elan of honesty, my sense would be certainly for the region to realize that the EU is the best chance to bring this region into modernity, first. Second one, to work hard to make it happen, second. And third, convince their internal constituency, but also that EU constituency, the EU will be better off with this region in rather than out.
Well, I tend to agree with you that this is going to be a great year, providing Albania and North Macedonia get the opening of negotiations. As you just said, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and I'm passionate about the countries. I've spent 6 years there, really is acknowledged as a candidate country. And this will already make this year great for the region. When it comes to Serbia, you've touched upon the dialogue and possible completion. Yeah, I'm optimistic. It is possible. I don't know whether end of this year or next, but the effort is needed. And this would make this whole story look, absolutely fascinating. But it's a difficult task, and we all know how difficult it is, and it is linked with different players and what they can do, etc. So, but there I fully agree. This is what I want to tell you. Yeah, this will make this year great. But yes, please understand, we do feel not at ease, expecting to see the composition of the parliament, the composition of the new commission. So, and we are saying this. And this is why I'd like to invite Milan. What is, in your eyes, when it comes to 2018, the elections, what brings Sofia and the next year?
To be honest, I recently wrote in an article that things that aren't happening in the message of the Nathalie Loiseau and the previous message of Macron should be read not in a negative sense. So agreeing with both other panelists, but maybe to read it a little bit more plastically as if there is some smoke in that building, and the regular order is not, precaution is not to enter to the elevator. So the message we got is not to enter to the elevator while there is a smoke. We don't know whether there is a fire in the building. And at the same time, they do not know whether we have a bucket full of water or we are wearing matches as usual. So combining those two, but nobody's preventing us of using stairs. And this is, I think, the message that was sent to us. We can go up in all of the reforms and to show somewhere that we can really be an asset for Europe that is now having Brexit as a crisis. And this is the message that we should try to promote. I think that the agreement between Serbia and Kosovo will be that bucket full of water that we are bringing to the European table, saying, yeah, we can really reach an agreement. Europe is first, of course, economic joint union. It started like that, speaking historically, but second is, it is also a peace project. This is something that we should also deliver to the table that now is really serving a bit, having not crisis, as you said, but it's constantly, as every entity, it's constantly reforming, trying to get a better angle, getting also, some of the problems within some of the countries. Having 28 is also not an easy task to handle. I never had a marriage of 28 people. I could not imagine working, So it's really hard task, and we have to understand it, not to use it in a negative sense. So listening to the Minister of Foreign Affairs Dacic on London summit, speaking that yes, and then joking with Poland as the next station for the Berlin process, it's not the message we should deliver. This is not the message. We have to trust that.
And I can say it was it was not diplomatic. It was brutal, but I can't say he was lying to anybody.
I know, but that's
it was
not
not
the message.
Untrue.
Yeah, of course, but this is not the message of somebody who is trying to reach the level, to say, yes, but we are trying to go there, but we know that the levels are not, as much as you're asking from us. So parallelly, we should see also the reforms as related to the rule of law and some of the sanctions to the countries that are not obeying and that are in, and it should be a good signal for us. And this is something we should ask and try to get, front pages with some of the good examples from the region, good examples of exchanges, or youth can really be a motor for that. We have RICO, also RICC that you chaired previously. These things can operate, and we should try to get maximum out of the Berlin process, because it shouldn't be just a station where everybody takes one photo and then we do not have the outcome. So we should get the things that are being agreed there, and there is a lot of material, try to exploit it, and to wait for the results of the European elections, and then to go push for that kind of changes. And also, speaking on the French policy, I'm Francophone also, so it's really, I'm learning it for 39 years, the French language, don't say it to anyone, since I was 4. And they like to make U-turns in the policies. And the messages that we are getting is, I think that they want really to have the re-engagement and to help our friends from Germany that are in the region very strongly in a way to really change that. And they also can have very good motivation for that, and also the asset of their presence is equally, and not to undermine
you will have
Italian.
A floor, but let us use a few minutes we have to at least open the floor. Anybody would like to join to ask? This is a minute you have. Anybody? Yes, please do.
We have only.
Goran, I realize I haven't replied to your question.
Please.
Sorry, on the reforming. Our position, when I say our position, is the position at 28 is clear. There's no sequence on reform first and enlargement after. The position is, as is written in the strategy, it says we can do, we are doing both at the same time. You can do the enlargement and the reforming process at the same time. So introducing a sequence is not the EU 28 position. First clarification. The second one, the news that you want to have. Milan said exactly, front page. What kind of front page we would like to have? Agreement with the Pristina achieved, economic reform, constitution adopted. We would like to see, I mean, from an enlargement point of view, I presume a number of people would like to be, we would like to see the things that we have agreed to do together, that you have agreed with us in the negotiation, are done. So we are writing the report every year. It's a lengthy exercise. Tanya knows because you know how much you work. We would love to have in the report saying how much progress has been made. We would love to. If we are repeating another year, this process hasn't been done, or this area has been moved, it's not a great assessment. So what we would like to write and to see and to hear is positive stories, advance commitment that you have made with us, with your people, translate into reality.
Thank you. Still? Here it is. Well, the question here displayed is, will Serbia become a member of EU during my life? And I am 53, I'm 55, guys. And I'm not a journalist, might end up as one. Well, yeah, guessing about the years. Look, I don't want to go into this. I was playing with 2007 when I was in the office, then 2014 as 100 years of the beginning of the First World, and then 2018 as so I don't dare to mention. But I remain positive. I will try to answer the question. I will. Yeah, I am. I remain Europhile. I am Europhile, meaning very much in favor of accession of Serbia to the EU. I'm ready to engage day and night on where I believe I can help on dialogue with Pristina, for instance, on settling the deal. I'd like to simply underline what Ambassador was honestly telling us. Guys, economically, you're gradually improving. Guys, when it comes to the rule of law, there is a lot to be done, and it's all based in the commitments we share. They're part of the SA, they're part of the accession process. And I actually am very happy that Tanya was very frankly telling. When it comes to the capacity of the team, they're doing a good job. I would dare to say perhaps, and this is why I've challenged you, whether you are supported, because it is very important to help and to strengthen the team which is engaged in negotiations, because gradually we are getting into a phase in which there would be a need to have people in Ministry of Environment, to have people in Ministry of Justice, to have people in Ministry of Finance who do have a lot of knowledge and who are now taking part of her job into the real life. So it is a big story. No, I don't want to end this discussion being negative on the EU. I just want to invite everyone to really be realistic. It's been years since we've started dreaming of the EU, but when it comes to negotiations, it's not that long. So it's not my government that started. It started only much later. And therefore, I'm very happy, and I'd like to thank you very much, Milan, for your contribution, because we would really need to rely on a supportive attitude of the civil society.
But I didn't ask about
we have the same age, so I'm very, I'm a little bit older than you, but...
Or ask, I try to help,
No,
please.
no, thank you for being also open on age. No, question is, my assessment would be rather simple. Accession doesn't depend on the waiting or wasting time. It's not that I became 18 years old and I have come to a major age, I can do something. No, it's not like this. The time need to be well used. One of the suggestions of the Commission was 2025 could be ambitiously but reasonably can be a time where Serbia can, providing that by 2023 all the reform are done, and you need a couple of years to make the ratification in all the parliament of each member state and the European Parliament, people who don't convince very easily. So people need to be really, really convinced the work has been done. The question, my question to you will be, are you individually, each of you, doing what is necessary to make this reform completed by 2023? Not you personally, but each of the society here. I think one of the messages is to enlarge the debate in the society on enlargement. Cannot be left to Tanya, cannot be left to me, cannot be left to Milan, can be something that the society as a whole has an impact on everybody. So the question is, to reply to your question, yes, provided that the reform are done. If it's not done, the time passes and we enter in this famous enlargement fatigue. It's like a chimera. It shouldn't be a chimera because the country has the possibility, has the potentiality, has the right people to do. And also we have a script. The script is this 35 chapters. We are not writing on blank pages. Tanya wrote tons on document. So we know that there was a need to be done. We are not reinventing the wheel. Question is, are we consistent in this job? Are we doing what is necessary to? Are we implementing? Are we doing track record? I think I'm relative. It's sure that when the job is done, I think the responsibility will be very hard for the European Union to say, I'm not convinced if the job is done. That's why we are working together to make sure that every of us has the same assessment on where the job is done. As unfortunately as today, the assessment is that we are still in an economic area more advanced. And if I can just make it, we shouldn't, I make it for an exemplification, economic area and rule of law, but they are not two silos. If you ask the businessman, some business person in the room, what is the main problem? We'll get corruption and red tape. These two come from the rule of law area, doesn't come from Harvard MBA. So the question is, we have to work all together because accession is not a foreign policy exercise, it's a society exercise. People, right, minority, and so on and so forth.
Touched by the first one.
Yeah, I could not agree more with Sam. Definitely, I am of the same age, and I am doing my best in terms of producing some results because I am strongly believing that this is the best possible blueprint of reform for my country, which will bring us into the family of most developed part of the world. With the best potential to cooperate and trade with other parts of the world, which we could not have if we are doing by ourselves. And yes, I also agree in terms that this is not the job for the negotiating team, one ministry, several ministries, even for the government or the parliament, but for the society. And that is one of the biggest developments that I am proud of since the beginning of the negotiation process. And this is our good cooperation. Yes, we fight with the civil society, but I think that we also establish a very good dialogue in terms of debating the reform process. We do have from time to time backsliding and kicks of different type, but this is also a learning process. You cannot learn how to debate after the centuries of not debating anything. So equally for reforming the state institutions, also reforming the society. And that is maybe the most important element of the reforms for the European integration process. To understand that we are working now in order to become full-fledged part of the European public policies. So to protect our own interest when creating the environmental policy of the European Union, we should build our own up to that time, to know what are our interests. And this is in the best interest of Serbia.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your question, but you have got a long answer to a very short question. I tend to do it usually. Now it's been done, colleagues of mine. Thank you very much. Ambassador Milan, Tanya.